as I mentioned, I'm Fatma. I work with Uncle Wayne and many other amazing colleagues at University of Queensland on this program, Let's Learn About Sleep. And in this webinar today, we'll talk about the process we have followed to engage consumers of First Nations communities in this research, and we'll share our reflections on what are the best practices to ensure the end user on the research processes are part of research as equal partners. Uncle Wayne, over to you for acknowledgement of country and introduction.
So what I'd like to do first is just explain to you what an acknowledgement of country is. In Aboriginal culture, we use the process of acknowledgement of country to actually pay our respects to the land that we are on here today. And I'm in Toowoomba in Queensland, Australia, and our traditional custodians are the Guyabel and the Jarowair people. So I'd like to pay my respects, and as the Let's Yarn About Sleep team, we'd like to pay our respects to the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today. And we pay our respects to their ancestors, their descendants, and we continue our cultural and spiritual connections to country. And we realise the valuable contributions that our people play in this global society. Our acknowledgement of country is something that we've done since time immemorial. So what it does is it lets others know that are visiting our place to know that they are welcome and that we respect them being here, and therefore we respect their behaviour and what they do on this country. So it's an acknowledgement of country. If you were coming to my traditional lands in the South Burnett area around here, I would give you a welcome to country, which we would be welcoming you onto that land. So an acknowledgement is like someone's knocking at your door, come on in, we're happy for you to be here, and let's share our story. And that's what we're going to do today, is share our story about the Let's Yarn About Sleep program. Fatima.
Thanks, Uncle Wayne. We'll talk about the process we have followed to implement consumer engagement in our program, but I would like to share the program background, where it started, how it started. So we know that sleep is a basic biological necessity. We all have felt how we feel when we don't get a good night's sleep. It affects our mood, energy, reaction time, emotion regulation, and then if that becomes a habit, people who don't sleep well, they get a lot of health issues, well-being, and all sort of problems. And thankfully, there is a growing recognition of the role of sleep in our health and well-being and productivity. But unfortunately, for First Nations people in Australia and across the globe, sleep health has never received the attention it deserves, and especially if you consider the impact of sleep on physical health, mental health, and the disproportionate burden of problems in First Nations communities. It is really interesting to know why sleep health has not been used in First Nations communities as an opportunity to reduce the risk and severity of mental health conditions. And one possible reason could be, well, sleep is a universal need. It's a very personal experience. It's a very subjective experience. It's shaped by a cultural background. It's shaped by where we live and how we live. So a lot of the mainstream sleep health programs that are being offered and very successful in other communities, they fail to be successful in First Nations communities because they don't have the cultural insight or cultural knowledge, which is critical. With this in mind, we started with a small project in 2020. A group of sleep researchers from my team and community elders decided to understand whether sleep health is a priority for First Nations people in a remote community in Queensland, and if it is, what are the key questions community members want us to answer. So from that small project, this program has turned into this ground-up sleep health equity movement in Australia, covering 3 states. And our focus is to lay the path to sleep health equity through integration of 2 worldviews and investing in local people and training them up to become sleep researchers or sleep health champions. The key focus for our program is to co-design sleep health program, train and upskill local health workforce, build First Nations health workforce, develop service delivery models that are aligned with local needs and contextual challenges, and embed sleep in preventive healthcare. Currently, we are working in 16 rural remote First Nations communities across 3 states in Australia. We are working with over 25 partners that include hospitals, Aboriginal community control health organizations, local GP clinics, schools, health and wellbeing services, and key advocacy groups. We are fortunate to have a strong funding support from the federal government to support this work, and we have significant media attention and coverage for our work. On the right-hand side, I've got key programs that are currently underway. We are working with community members to co-design a sleep health program for young people so that we can use sleep health as an intervention to reduce the risk and severity of mental health conditions. We are working with health services to co-design models for sleep apnea service delivery and training local people as sleep health champions or sleep technologists to ensure people can get care for sleep apnea in their local communities without having the need to travel to other areas. So essentially what we're trying to do is reduce the barriers in service access, designing programs in consultation in partnership with community members and other stakeholders so that our programs are meeting the need of intended end users. And for that, community engagement is a critical process. I'll leave it to Uncle Wayne to explain what is the definition of community engagement in working with Aboriginal communities and what are the key values. So over to you, Uncle Wayne.
Thanks, Padma. Yeah, folks, looking at our community engagement model, I think we can quite simply put those boxes there, but it's what those boxes mean and what they mean to our community. And it's about partnering, and as it says, a partnering collaboration and involving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our research. Too often our people are researched on more than with. And I always say that our research should be based around relationships rather than transactions. So what we looked at doing was developing steps that actually allowed us to follow a path. But this pathway was determined in conjunction with our communities. It wasn't like us saying, here, this is what you have to fit into. We developed the process with our community to meet the community's needs that actually allowed them, our communities, to have ownership and being empowered. So obviously, all of us on the project have a number of different other areas we're working, but the commonality that we found was that lack of sleep led to so many health issues, both physical and mental health issues. I myself work a lot in the suicide intervention and prevention space, and a key component, or a common component, was that person not getting the sleep and the rest and not allowing their spirit and their health to rejuvenate. So we saw that as being able and looking at responding to the community's priorities. And our Wunju, or our weave, was how did we fit this knowledge and this research in with the needs of the community, rather than how do we fit the community's needs into our research model? Because it's about finding that common ground. And you'll see that central box there in the middle is third cultural space. And that is I think, one of the most vital components, because the third cultural space, and I'm doing a lot of research around this, is actually finding the common ground, taking into account the needs of both our Western research model and our Indigenous research model. An Indigenous research model is based around what we call knowing, being, and doing. And it's looking at what we know, how we know it, our doing and how we enact it, and our being as who we are. So our community members led the process within their own communities because, as we know, those who live in our communities are the experts on their community. They are historically, culturally, family linked to not just each other, but to the land. And our concept of Indigenous land custodianship is based around a different model to the Western model. We don't own the land owns us. We are caretakers, custodians of the land. So our community members have different roles within their communities, but for this process, we actually engage with them to find what they wanted to contribute and how we could then work with them in creating a cultural space that allowed knowledge that our team brought to blend with, to weave, to wanju with our communities. And as I said, that relational versus transactional concept is a very strong common thread because it gives ownership and empowerment to those engaged with the research, but more importantly, it allows that engagement and ownership to be very flexible and fluid to the needs of not just the research team and our funding cycles and our requirements and our compliance-based processes, but to the community's needs. As an example, Fatima and her team were supposed to be in another part of Queensland this week, but due to sorry business passing in the community, that trip has changed the dates because rather than say, no, we have to be there, we are very conscious of the community's needs and how we come to that common space to allow it to happen. So I think it's very important that we not only engage with the community, but something we don't do a lot of people don't do a lot of, is actually listen to the community, not just give the lip service, but actually sit down and what we call yarn. And yarning is not just the speaking of knowledge, it's actually the sharing and listening of knowledge. So it's really important. But that concept of time and timing is a very Western method of judging, of segregating. And that's not saying that we disregard time, but our time, our concept of time in our Indigenous communities is based around what's happening at the time, what seasons are happening, what flowers are blooming, what animals are being born, what the weather is doing. So in regards to our concept of timing, for instance, in a project management timeline for a research project, it does not always line up with that concept of time and timing of the community. And again, I reiterate that this particular team of the Let's Yarn About Sleep have been very, very flexible with the needs of the community while still meeting the needs of the research model. And I think that is where that third cultural space has really made this this project strong and actually readily accepted and embraced by our community in Mount Isa and the traditional custodians of the Kalkadoon people. And these are they. These are our deadly team. And when we say deadly, we mean really, really good rather than deadly. These are our local traditional custodians and Fatima, beautiful Fatima at the front. And on your screens, right-hand side in the corner is Roz, who is really our rock, our lifeline in the community. She's a local person and she works with our program extensively and unrelentingly because of her belief in not only the program, but her belief and connections within her own community. Because bottom line is she wants what's best for her community. And I think it's really important. And all our elders there have contributed not just with their presence, but with their knowledge and their experience. And it's really important that our elders engage, because what happens then is our young ones learn these stories. They learn the knowledge from our elders that allows them to take that forward. And as Fatima said earlier, the sustainability of the project is not in the funding as much as it is in the sustainability of this project continuing on through our young ones, through our young people. And I was very fortunate enough to be at our symposium at the end of that particular stage of the project, and just to hear these young ones speak, very nervously, mind you, but to speak so compassionately and empowered about what they've got from the program and what the program's done for them. And their parents were there actually just embracing the leaps forward that they have made. And I think that all comes back to they felt safe in the project, engaging with the project and trusting the project. I think that is a really important, because as I say, that is the heart of our program. So when we actually did the consultation, the connection with our community, connection is a big word. And I love the word connection because what it does, it connects us on different levels. You know, when an Indigenous person, when we meet each other for the first time, we always say, you know, who are you? Who's your mob? Where are you from? We make connections with each other. We find our common ground. Using this guiding framework that leads us to that sleep health equity, we looked at the factors that surrounded it, the drivers, that spiritual health, that physical health, and the mental health. One of my main roles here at the University of Queensland is to educate our medical students on Indigenous health and history, and explaining to them and giving them examples of how health is not just about medicine, but it's about the combination of our mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health. And in an Indigenous perspective, that is not only linked to our land, it's linked to our sleep. It's linked to our rhythms in our world. So we use the concepts in the blue circles as our guiding processes that actually were our pillars for the research. And that is truth. The truth and the truth telling. And sometimes the truth is very difficult to hear, let alone to say. By having our trust in our communities and their trust in us, that truth was allowed to be said. The concept of reciprocity, where it wasn't just us saying to the community, give to us, it's what we gave back and what they gave. It's what we shared. The integrity was really important because, as you know, with our ethics and integrity, research is very constrained or very bound by that concept. But we also have our cultural integrity and our individual integrity. There were times where questions were asked that were difficult to answer, but I think the fact that we actually worked together to find those answers showed that we are willing to work with our communities. It was also an opportunity for our communities to actually develop a better understanding of the health systems around them and actually the importance of sleep. As Fatima said, you will know more when you don't have a good sleep than when you do have a good sleep. If you haven't had a great sleep the night before or over a period of time, your body lets you know and it reacts. That reflexivity, the students are asked to reflect upon their journey and to keep diaries on how their sleep is. And it's a vital skill for this process, but it's also a really good life skill for them to actually have that reflexivity, to actually take into other parts of their lives. Obviously, the trust, the partnerships, and the respect are really important because they are two-way elements that actually pull us together. And it's linked there. There's no, as you'll see, there's no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no starting point because the process, the wanju or the weave, is actually continuing. It's not just at this point we do this, at this point we do that. It's we take these factors into account throughout the project. And then on the outskirts, it's how do we privilege First Nations voices? Rather than just say person A said, person A did. How do we privilege that first-hand knowledge of the world's oldest living culture? How do we integrate those cultural knowledges that are not just based on the land, but in the minds and the hearts and the spirits of our people? And those knowledges are very, you have to understand that not everyone, every Indigenous person in Australia has knowledge of their cultural practices. Because of our stolen generations, a lot of our families and communities were disrupted. So that flow of knowledges and history, I believe our project actually helped reconnect that. Our elders started talking a bit more to our young ones. But as importantly, our young ones asked questions of their elders. So it actually shared that knowledge. Responding to local priorities. Now, throughout the time in Mount Isa, there was a whole heap of unrest and issues within the community. But I think the beauty and the strength of the project actually allowed that project to continue on regardless of what was happening outside. But we still needed to respond to that because our community members who engaged in our process actually had other things to do. It'll be great if they just focus with us on our research, but they have lives, they have things to do, they have family, cultural, community, social responsibilities, jobs to actually do as well. So it's responding to that. And I think something that makes this research quite different and more outstanding than a lot of others is following our strengths-based approaches. Too often, we look for solutions in a deficit model. And if we keep looking in the deficit model for a solution, we're going to revisit the same issues every time. We focused on strengths-based approaches. In saying that, we said, what is going to make this work? What is going to help this project work and achieve its outcomes, rather than why can't we do it? And therefore, that our communities have been so researched and so questioned and surveyed that too often data is drained from a community and taken away, and the community doesn't know what happens with it, where it goes. So it's important that our strengths-based, we let our communities know, and they have the governance on the data, the sovereignty of the data, to know what it's used for, when it's used, and they have a huge say in how we use that data. And obviously, that's strengthening the local capacity. It's not just those engaging with the research, it's all those local businesses, that local community. We were very fortunate at the symposium at the end of the project, a local proprietor who sells, I'm not sure what you call it, like therapeutic beds that have specific mechanical functions and are built for people with sleep issues. He donated 10 of those. He was that impressed with what had been done and the community's needs. He donated 10 of those beds to people in the project. Not only is that a great community gesture, it's a large financial commitment as well. So as you can see, there's, yes, our research parameters, but the additional collateral strengths that come from it have been really great. So I suppose looking as we break that down, and even though we say it's a non-linear approach, we'll show you this way to show you that progressive approach. So, you don't just rock up at a community and say, hi, I'm here to do research. It's about knowing the local protocols with your initial contact. And as we said, this is where Roz played a huge part, and Fatima's history with Mount Isa in the community had a huge impact. They already had a basis of trust there and knowledge of the community. Looking at local champions to champion the cause, to support through the difficult times and the good times of the process, and looking at the cultural protocols that needed to be addressed, not overcome, but addressed and followed to allow the communication to start. And the concept of deep listening is what we call the DEARY. And it's not just sitting there with your ears open, it's about engaging with the knowledge and accepting the knowledge. Because as you'd all be aware, on our learning journey, we're not always open to learning new things. Learning new things comes at a time in our culture when you're ready for it. Our elders' skill is knowing when they think you're ready to know this knowledge. So your journey, it moves along. Then as we started that groundswell, we put our base down, and then we started that ongoing consultation. The community themselves looked at the input and engagement in all aspects. They actually had a huge say in what happens, when it happens, and I think importantly, why it happens. And then investing in the community's research capability is providing skills, training, knowledge to our local community members on that Western way of research. And rather than say this is the only way, then we sat with them and they showed us their way of research. We found that common ground. Regular communication is also very important, because too often, as I said, someone will fly in, do the research, grab the data and fly out. And the community goes, who was that? Where did they go? The regular communication and presence in Mount Isa was key in actually that ongoing. And that continued connection is also important about who is in our communication chain. There are local protocols on communication on who you speak to about certain things, what knowledge is shared, how it's shared, when it's shared. And the recognition of our community researchers of recognising and celebrating their engagement and success, giving them opportunities not only to be engaged in the program, but to be part of it and be remunerated for their engagement in the project. And that sustainability of research-related change, because we might use a language in research that is foreign to a lot, but the knowledge that we use with our communities is that common strength, that strengths-based approach knowledge. And I think we learned as much from our community as they did about us. talking about our research and how it went. Okay, so I suppose it's really important to understand that just back when I'm talking about the communication, it wasn't just electronic, it wasn't just verbal, it was identifying what were the best methods of communication, what met the community's needs, not, you know, to an extent had to meet our needs, but our focus and our customer, our research partner are our community. So what did they need? Not everyone has access to internet. Not everyone has access to emails or a phone or a reliable phone. So how did we find out what was the best communication method? And we used a very, very scientific method. We actually asked people. We said, what works best for you? And they told us. So when we look at that pre-project, you can see our research and community, very important to understand who are the traditional custodians of the land. In Mount Isa, it's the Kalkadoon people, but understanding the histories, the native title and land rights surrounding that area, not just walking in and assuming. We had to find out, we had to respect the local protocols, who the members were, the values and protocols. But I think what really got our teams accepted was how we conducted ourselves in the community with respect. As I said, I'm an Aboriginal man from a different part of Australia, different part of Queensland. That's not saying that my protocols are the same as the Kalkadoon lot. So part of my ceremony is introducing myself to our elders and finding that common ground. And then the contacting community is important because what we needed to do was have consistency in our communication, not just in our methodology, but in our approach, in our timing. Our traditional owners and custodians are very important because the local protocols state they are the sharers and holders of knowledge. Our elders, now in our towns, we will have elder. Now, there's no test to be an elder. An elder is someone who is accepted by their community as a knowledge holder, someone of responsibility and respect. So we don't say who the elders are, our communities tell us. Now, sometimes elders on traditional lands aren't from that place. So there's another protocol. But also the key community stakeholders, such as the local businesses, the local schools, the local health organisations. It's really important to engage with them because they do play a key role. And by engaging those key community stakeholders, not just with our research, but with our community, because a lot of times there are breakdowns in the community with those key stakeholders for whatever reason. So what we tried to do, and I think what we did, was actually create some links between our community organisations and our community people that allowed stronger relationships to be built or repaired or even to restart again. As we said, valuing local community members and local champions is a way of respecting what's happening on the ground. It's key to the promotion of the project. And a lot of our people in communities, there's certain people in communities that do a lot of work. They have what we call cultural responsibility or cultural load. And it's usually the same people. Well, what we wanted to do was not only respect that, but also how do we get them to engage with us if they do indeed want to. So it's about showing them the respect and how the community accepts us as part of their community. And our local champions and stakeholders and local researchers, again, as I said from that picture earlier, are the glue that held it apart. And I suppose it's really integral having those community stakeholders in not just establishing, but maintaining community connection. Because there are people in our communities that come and go. There are consistent people. But with our project, we worked a lot with the young ones in the community, the school kids. School kids have parents. Parents and kids don't always see eye to eye. So it was about understanding and establishing the communication with not just the parents and the community elders, but even the students. And as we all know, younger ones speak a different language to us older ones there for a while. So it's about how do we connect with all participants in the research. And I think that was a really important facet that made it work well, as I said, at the symposium at the end. it was great to see mums and kids stand there and really, some of the knowledge that they shared with us was just heart-wrenching. But where they've travelled and the journey they've travelled since their sleep has improved, in their relationships with their family, their community, and with each other, has just been inspiring. And I think they are the collateral strengths that we get from this project. It allows our young ones and our parents and our community people to actually engage on that common ground talking about sleep. So that ongoing consultation is really important, because too often in our world, research is done, over, we move on. What's the next project? The sustainability of the project, not in just journal form or how we write it up, what it looks like on the ground, how it develops, how it grows, how it shrinks, how it gets bigger, how it gets smaller. New students come in, new families, new stakeholders in the community. So to allow that to happen, the community steering groups were created so the community had their finger on the pulse. We're a couple of thousand Ks away from where this project is actually happening, 1,800 Ks. So our people, our steering group members in the community are the pulse. They take that pulse. The how we measure, as I always said, I use the analogy, measuring centimetres with an inch ruler. Yeah, it's sort of close, but does it meet the need? So the consultation and developing our culturally appropriate tools and measures, yes, we have our research-based tools, but it needs to mean something and make sense to our community. And again, talking about strengths-based approach. A component of ownership and leadership is not always done by the researchers, the organisation or the institutions running the research. It's about how do we create a space, a safe cultural, academic space where both the researchers and the community people can work together. And it's that word integration. How do we integrate community engagement with project activities? Rather than having an activity or an event for the sake of it, what's existing in the community? What's happening in the community that we can tap into? Or adversely, what are we doing that the community can tap into? Not creating an event for the sake of an event, because our communities are so over engaged sometimes that it's just good to not have anything happen. And if there's something that is strong for the community, how do we engage? Investing in the community, research roles for community members. We've had a number of community members who have shown interest and potential and knowledge and understanding of research that are actually helping us with other projects based around the same concept of sleep. So it's investing, not as much saying investing means dollars, although we do support, it's investing in their futures and the potential to be researchers, to be whoever they want to be. And by allowing the sleep program to work with them, they are getting the rest and understanding. They are being introduced to methods. They have been introduced to responsibilities of keeping that sleep diary, of reflecting on what they do. And those are skills that are very transferable. A regular consultation. I'm on the data governance group. We meet regularly just to look at what the data is, what we do with it, how we treat the data, and if the community and the research team are happy with the data. It's an ongoing process throughout the whole journey. And it's ongoing to meet the needs of the whole team. Not just Fatima, not just myself, but the whole team. Community feedback has always been strong, but it's always been listened to and taken into account. And not just in that concept of lip service, yes, fill out the survey form. It's auntie, uncle, mum, dad, young ones. What do you think? What do you want to see? What do you like? What don't you like? How do you feel about this? And we use those concepts of engaging and empowering our communities to actually build the strengths. As I said, that deep listening and learning is important, because what it does, it not just empowers our community, it empowers us as researchers. So I think that's, really big for us. let's have a look here. How are we going, Fano? So as you can see, there's a lot of key points. That face-to-face consultation is really important. It's great to send out a paper. It's great to send out an email, a Zoom lecture, but that face-to-face, the value of face-to-face is important. And understanding our local protocols, and what I mean by local protocols is you can go to a community. When I was developing our health curriculum here, I had to go, I visited communities, I introduced myself, I waited for invitations, but I didn't have to, but I sat in meetings with our elders and with our local councils until it was time for me to speak, until I had earned their respect and trust to be able to put my case forward. I can't just walk in and say, put me on the agenda, I want to be number one today so we can talk. It's about understanding the local protocol. And it's about that two-way conversations. Not what I can do for you or you can do for us, is what can we do together. And it might be simply, Aboriginal fellas, we love a feed, as everyone does. We love food. So if you put on a good feed at a meeting, you'll get more people there. That's just a hook. Also, the concept of providing transportation, as simple as that sounds, not everyone in a community has access to transportation. We take it for granted that everyone's got a car or a motorbike or whatever. But in some of those towns, especially in the wet season, they can't get from A to B. They're 6 foot underwater. So it's important to understand the needs. They co-develop our research. It's really important. And we found that we as researchers for University of Queensland have to really walk in a number of worlds. We have to walk in that research world and follow the requirements of our research grants, as we all do. But to make it work the way it's worked, we also have to be flexible enough in our approach to co-develop our research with our research base, which is that consultation with community. And that consultation is not necessarily a formal meeting. It might just be a yarn over a coffee. It might just be catching up with auntie or uncle down the road at the shops. But it's about allowing those natural pre-conversations to happen, because not everybody wants to speak up in a meeting of 20 or 30 people. Maybe some people don't have the responsibility or role to do that. So it's about aligning those communities' needs with our research priorities. Where's the common ground? And we need then to continually be refining our scope and questions to get our answers, but rather than get our predicted answers, we want our real opinions and answers and responses from our community. Sometimes difficult to take. Don't get me wrong, our consultation hasn't always been smooth sailing. We have had some issues to deal with. We have had misunderstandings, communication barriers. We've had timing issues. But by building trust and common ground, we seem to have been able to address those issues and move forward. Too often I've been engaged with research as being researched in my community, where someone will come in from a group or an institution, organisation to research us, and basically they will determine how, where, what and why is done. And when we don't meet their how, where, what and why, it finishes. And there's always an issue. So a lot of our communities are very wary of the exposure they give to outside research teams. And I think, because we've built that common ground, I know our community of Mount Isa are very engaging with us. Looking at that sustainability, how does the research and the project commit to long-term change and impact in the community? Unfortunately, in the real world of research, our funding is finite. We have limited funding, time, but by taking our research and our engagement with the community past that stage and creating partnerships within community organisations, our research and the role of that research and the findings of it can be used for many other things. Some of the other studies have been regarding in suicide in communities. drug use, social, emotional health, and how this research has actually shown that sleep is definitely a factor that needs to be addressed. So that can continue that post, very similar in the same flow as revisiting our sustainability, looking at our impacts on the community. Our impacts being not just, what people say, it's how people are engaged, and looking at school attendance. Has it improved? The rates of student mental health, has it improved due to the fact that they're getting better sleep? The dissemination is, how do we culturally, because the information that we share basically with our ethics is our cultural ethics that we are bound by as well. How do we disseminate this information? How do we use this information in a way that promotes the program but keeps our participants safe, but also understands the cultural need? Looking at how do we share that outside of academia. The Courier Mail is actually a newspaper in Australia for Indigenous people, and the Courier is our sort of colloquial name for Aboriginal people from New South Wales and Victoria. So our Courier Mail is a way to disseminate that information that travels right across Australia. We've been really fortunate. Bless his soul, Dr. Michael Mosley come and did a article with us on its sleep program, how we disseminate that and how we use that knowledge and that we've gained to gain recognition for our community. And as Fatima said, there's been a number of awards and opportunities where we've been able to advocate for that change. And then, of course, celebrating. We had a graduation symposium. As I said, that was the day where it all came together, and just the power and strength and balance that was in that room that day was really great. And then obviously thanking and acknowledging the community and the participants by not just, a gift, but by acknowledging the risk that they took with us to expose themselves and be vulnerable to create a better place for our youth and to realise the role that sleep plays, and how sleep is not only linked to our health, but it's linked to our cultural cycles of life as well. And obviously that leads to, we have, as Fatima said, future research projects that have followed on from this one today. Fatima, over to you.
Thanks, Uncle Ben. So as Uncle Ben has covered, what are the key guiding practices and values for us to implement best practices for community engagement in our research, I'll share one example on how we have embedded that in our project, one of the projects that is focused on sleep health of young people. What we have done in the first 2 years, or rather first 3 years of the project, is just consulted with a range of stakeholders. We spoke with over 300 people in that community, and Mount Isa is a very transient community. A lot of people come and go from that region. It's a mining community. While it's Kalkadoon country, in our consultation, we have spoken with over 25 traditional groups, people from over 25 traditional groups, elders, young people, their parents, carers, service providers, and those consultations help us understand what are the community views and needs from this project, what they want from us, and how they want us to design this program, and what are the key priorities for them that they want us to address, and how do we all work together to find those solutions, design those solutions, and implement those solutions, and how we achieve or design a program that is based on sleep health, and of course based on best research evidence, but also privileges First Nations worldviews, community level contextual factors, and ensuring that everyone who joins our program has something to benefit from. And it's also understanding that not everyone has the opportunity to practice sleep hygiene messages. Not everyone has access to safe, clean, comfortable housing. So how do we address all those issues that play a big role in people's ability to practice sleep hygiene messages? So all those consultations were very important, critical, and very rewarding for us to understand what exactly needs to happen for this program. One of the key outcomes from those consultations was to understand that the current tools that we have to assess sleep health of young people are not aligned with the First Nations worldviews of sleep health and are focused on a deficit discourse. So we decided not to use any of the validated measures that were not validated for use in First Nations communities and have worked with community elders and other stakeholders to design those tools which can assess sleep health of program participant, but based on a strength-based framework and that are responsive and meaningful for them to answer those questions, considering where they are living and how they are living. And those tools were very well received. Another way we have embedded the community engagement or community voices in the program is to understand how this program should be conducted. And of course, we were designing a program, we were designing tool. One of the key challenge that was raised by community members is to rely on external people to run the program. And they ask us to design a training framework for local people to become sleep coaches and get this training. And then once they are trained, run the program through them. But the big question for us was we had no idea what that sleep coach training framework would look like because it's what this program is first ever in Australia. Then again, we went back to those community members, elders, and other stakeholders to understand what exactly they would want to see in the sleep coach training. And from those consultations, we realized, of course, the focus on sleep coach. So sleep should be a key part of the program, the training framework, but it also should cover other issues that affect sleep health, such as mental health, domestic violence, intergenerational trauma, alcohol and other drug abuse, narrative therapy, but also embedding that cultural knowledge from elders in for sleep coaches. So when they see a young person struggling with sleep, they not only offer advice on sleep, but also help them connect with their community, their clan, their country, and extend their cultural identity. So this whole training framework took us some time to design and implement, and we have trained local First Nations people as sleep coaches, and that whole training and the way we have co-designed the training framework and tools and resources was again very well received because it wasn't us who designed that. It was done with local people and we were guided by them throughout this journey. And then the program itself, well, of course, the program was on sleep health, so it should cover information on sleep health. But as elders suggested that we just can't focus on one thing. We need to make it holistic. We need to make it interactive. We need to make it engaging. And we need to bring young people to their culture. For those who did not get the opportunity, we need to embed some measures the program that young people join the program. They get the traditional and cultural knowledges on sleep health. So what we offer is actually a program that takes 8 to 10 weeks to complete. It starts with pre-programmed yarning and data collection using the tools that we have designed with community members. And then after that, those trained sleep coaches, they run session 1 to 5. Session 1 to 3 is all about sleep health. What are the key factors affecting sleep health, sleep hygiene, how to decide a goal that people want to achieve from the program, how to achieve that. But session 4 and 5 are more about the connection with culture and country. Session 4 is actually a walk on country where a traditional owner from the local community takes young people for a walk on country and share knowledge on the bush food and bush medicine that people have used for centuries to get a good night's sleep. Session 5 is a relaxation training based on First Nations worldviews and connection to country. And these two sessions are very well liked by the young people. And after that, we collect post-program data using the same tool as I mentioned before. And then there's a graduation ceremony that invites all the young people, their friends and their families and everyone they want to invite in that event so that we all can celebrate what they have achieved. So just reflecting on the key learnings from the program, as I suggested, community engagement is critical. It's ongoing and continuous. We have a strong community governance in place where we have local people guiding us. We are working with community, but working at their pace, not pushing our research, not imposing our research. We work with local people, offer, invest in local community, understanding their needs, celebrating our achievements, and ensuring that it is the community who has the ownership and leadership in this program at all stages, and recognizing local champions and their effort in the program. Uncle Ben, would you like to share the concluding remarks for today's session?
Yes, thanks, Fatima. So, as Fatima said, the key message is, is that community engagement, following proper processes. How do you find out the process? You ask community, and they must be mutually agreed. Have that reciprocal relationships because they're really critical and impact. Trust and relationships are key, but it's a two-way street. You can't demand trust. We earn trust. Community earns trust with us. We earn their trust. But it's also not just trust in the process, it's in individuals. And I think by putting ourselves there, by actually going to Mount Isa, sitting on the dirt, sitting in there with mob and yarning with them, it allowed them to see who we are, that we took the time to go there. And we've had our team and members of the team come into Brisbane and they've really enjoyed it as well. That local leadership offering their rich knowledge of their protocol, the context and strengths is really integral. Ask the person who knows the strengths. It's like when we talk to I say my medical students, who's the expert on that individual's health? They are. Engage with that patient and they will then provide you with that information that you, as the doctor, can synthesize. It's the same thing here. How did we take the knowledge that our community shared with us and use it to build that common ground? And I think the fruits of the project have spoken for themselves. But I think it's, we've created lifelong partnerships and friendships. I think that's really important.